Okay, so we will go ahead and call the meeting to order, and I think you want to say something about public comment?
Yes, so for public comment, we're going to try to stick really to the Brown Act and not comment on public comment so that we can get through the agenda, which we sometimes struggle to do.
Sure.
Yeah, and that was it. So
That was
last
it.
time, because we missed a lot of the agenda, because I think I was the one who mostly went on and on about public comment.
Public comment was 54 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
right. So we want to, if we're going to do this, we'll try to do it right. So Cynthia's missing for some reason, but I just sent her text, so she must be up there.
So
somewhere.
on approval of minutes, I will just apologize. We didn't have anyone take the minutes last time, so Marina gratefully went off of my notes, did the best she could. So if you guys want to review it this meeting, or if you want to hold it over and look over it more thoroughly for next meeting, either way.
We do have a couple changes to them. So
Okay.
we did review them, I think.
Okay. Go for it.
In the public comment on non-agenda items section, the third paragraph, second line should say, it must take everything out from the V building, not from Title V. And then the next line,
Wait.
This is the
Title.
third paragraph.
third paragraph from the top, it should say, it must take everything out from the V building.
Shows you where my brain is.
And the next line, Apple will cohabitate, that's incorrect. The new professional development office will cohabitate.
How about if I just say professional development?
Sure.
And did we had some previous meeting notes that we had to approve from previous meetings?
I thought we approved them at the last meeting.
I don't think
Was
so.
it college council?
No, I think it was this meeting. We can
We
go
did.
back
I
and
will
check.
double check.
We did not.
We
did
did
we?
not.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, but I
Yeah.
didn't see it. They weren't on this attachment,
Yes,
so
so
we have to go back and
we
look.
have to go back one or two meetings, and
Okay.
we'll bring it back at the next meeting.
And then Pat, I think you saw something down.
Right, on the second page.
Second page. Hey,
Under
we got all
win-
the way to the second
I know,
page.
Under winter.
Under
it
winter.
said that Pat Rose stated that we were told it will come back, feels FA dropped the ball. Okay, I did say FA dropped the ball, but I meant that we both dropped the ball, both the executive committee and the FA dropped the ball because we stopped.
How about if we just say feels that the ball was dropped?
Well, we don't have to use the passive voice. We can simply say, because I did mean the executive committee and the FA who dropped the ball about winter.
So FA and executive and Senate
Right.
exec.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Was that it? Do we want to approve?
Yeah, do we want a formal action? Want to make a motion? Second?
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Thank you, Dr. Bell.
You're welcome.
Do we have any public comments on non-agenda items? One each. So I saw the first hand on the left side, so we'll go Melissa and then Julie.
I just want, as I'm sitting here, I'm noticing, and this is very random, but, in the effort of what the accreditation committee said, get along and so on, to me, this is just as a person of the public, it looks like there's like this one side of administrators and the other side of faculty, maybe as a recommendation, maybe sit in a round table, that's my only thing. But I also have another thing.
I need to look at you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys, sorry,
wanna
no
see them.
comment.
All right, so in the spirit of public comment, we'll go
Sorry.
ahead and
No comment.
then we'll just, okay,
But
thank you.
I also had a question if I could do a public comment on something else way later, because I have to leave later, so. it
I'm
would be
okay
for
with that if the
number-
rest of the committee is fine with that.
Number 10.
Go right ahead.
Is that okay? Okay. So, as I mentioned in the Senate the other day, there were some new issues that have come up. So I just want to just recommend a few recommendations from our committee, from the ad hoc hiring issues committee, for immediate attention to consider later when you guys are talking. Possibly extend deadlines and examine rejected applications manually for HR to go through those, even for external candidates, to make sure that everybody's applications are are complete. Then to notify applicants if they haven't done so already and let them know that they're still in consideration. Possibly even more important is to communicate, this would be number 3, communicate to the deans or the chairs of each of the hiring committees so they can communicate to the people on the hiring committees, because I'm on one And technically, nobody has informed us of what's going on, but I know that there are some problems. I'm waiting to be informed by HR. Another suggestion would be, we look forward to HR providing some clear guidelines on what to do when when procedures are not being followed in HR. Right now, I believe it stands as just contact Terry Hampton. I think there could be some more clarification on what to do, because it seems that that's happening, but still things aren't getting resolved. And finally, the participation agreement, it says that if you cannot comply with requirements, you should decline from participating and being on the committee. And you would be dismissed, or you should dismiss yourself. But that's not happening on the hiring committee that I'm in, when the person on the hiring committee wrote a letter of recommendation for one of the people that applied. So it's still, HR is aware of it, but there's still, everything is kind of still status quo, so I'm just still waiting for that to get fixed. And it's been about 2 weeks. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie, you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna bring it up at BRAC tomorrow because it's a money issue, but on this campus, I don't think we only have a money issue. I think we have an access to the money issue, so I'm gonna bring it up here. It came up at Senate yesterday, so I'm just gonna read the memo that I sent to many of you this morning, because the Senate hasn't heard it also, but I really feel like it needs to be put on an agenda so we can talk about it somewhere. So the Senate spoke on Monday about some of their budget issues and about not having a budget to buy envelopes for basic Senate elections. The Senate also spoke about not having money to provide a meal for retiring faculty, and that the rest of the faculty should pay an upcharge to cover all of the comped meals. The faculty feel that this is unfair given the amount of food that seems to be regularly offered in manager and guest meetings. Case in point, we walked in, there was food again today. When we ask about this, we're told that it comes out of a different budget. We need to have more equitable distribution of these different budget resources on this campus. The faculty believe that the district should cover this end-of-year Senate meal for all retiring faculty. It is a small token of appreciation for decades of work. We also believe the Faculty Senate should have an operating budget for expenses. The faculty senators do the work of the faculty and the district and should be treated as professionals. Now, we'd like to know where this goes in the planning and priorities process and move forward. So we'd like it fixed for this year, and we'd like a budget for next year, but we need to know, where do we go to ask for this budget? Okay, I know you can't answer.
Well, I am dying to answer though. I can
the-
solve both of these problems.
The chair can refer it out to be addressed. Would you like to do that, Dr.
I would, well, yes, I would like to first refer the first part of it to me to address, and the second part to Joe to address. First part is, we have a college service fund that we are now using differently than perhaps we've used it in the past. So if the academic senate would like to come to me as interim superintendent president with a request for some level of support for a breakfast, we would be more than happy to support that.
I thought that would be the answer.
Thank
but
you.
You have to ask before we can get an answer.
Absolutely true. And so in the future, as these things come up, come down, drop me a note or stop by or whatever, and I'll be happy to help. And the second is the Academic Senate does have a budget, and we're happy to augment the budget as needed. And Joe now can respond to the second half of that question.
So Academic Senate does have a budget. I'll find out who has the requisition access, because I believe it's Judy Brown? Benson, sorry. It may be a training issue, so we can get her the training. And then the food, I was going to say it could be the College Services Fund, or it could be in the normal budget, but it would have to be a consent item for the board to approve the expense of the food dollars.
Exactly. So a budget packet went to the Academic Senate office.
It did not. I'm going to meet with them first.
Okay. So there's money in the Academic Senate budget, and certainly there should be supply money, and if there's ever anything like that that's not adequate, again, please see us and we'll take care of it.
And I want to say,
There's money.
don't quote me, but I think it's about, it may be too much, but I think about $50,000 within the various object lines of the budget. So I think it's a training and an access issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chris, is it your understanding they have $50,000 and we can't buy envelopes with $50,000?
I don't know.
I've just heard there isn't any money, so,
Okay,
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so there's a failure to communicate somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's an issue that we had when Dan was the treasurer too, but we always worked it out. I think it is partially what Joe's talking
And
about, but we'll
I can
fix it.
probably respond to that.
Yeah.
Great,
It's-
okay.
If they're all that easy, life would be good.
Yeah.
And I have
Envelopes this
a
year.
brief public comment, just to let you know, since it's not on the agenda. Number one, the bachelor's degree program has been reopened since some of the proposed programs were not approved. We hope to be able to get a submission in, and although we can't talk about it today, timeline-wise, the applications are due April 15th. And if we could discuss the subject at the next Senate meeting, that would be good. There are two faculty-driven recommendations coming forward, which Dr. Bell has arranged to have discussed on Monday with those faculty members. The number two thing is, and I regret this strongly, but I'm going to have to cancel and postpone the April 13th Brown Act training. Another event has come up that takes precedence. You'll understand when that announcement goes out, but I will look to rectify this quickly and schedule it still on the same schedule as an alternate Senate meeting, and I'll work with you guys on that.
And, you know, one of the problems with this, the Brown Act and Capm being now under that is we really can't have full and thorough conversations when things like this pop up, both of those items. I guess I'll just maybe bend the rules a little bit to say that the reason why the baccalaureate thing comes back to the table is because the Board of Governors approved 15 degrees. Two of those entities were not able to follow through. One of which we know for certain will not be able to follow through, the other one is still questionable. So there's one slot open again, giving all the other community colleges an opportunity to reapply the second go around. We are now in a position to seriously consider 2 baccalaureate degrees, and that's why the topic's been reopened for discussion. And the other one will become clear once you see the information.
Thank you. Institutional Effectiveness Program Initiative Goals. Raise your hand if it's your first time hearing this. Okay, so apparently as part of one of the regulations that went through, you remember last year colleges were asked upon to respond to a request for proposals to serve as the kind of gurus of institutional effectiveness, and College of the Canyons won that right. Well, in addition to that being part of the bill, they were also to establish a committee that would come up with an institutional effectiveness scorecard for California community colleges. They've done that as a draft, and it has 18 measures on it, and they are asking each college to create a target for each of those 18 measures by June. Now, luckily, they've said that this year, because they know they've given it to us so late, and this is fresh, we only heard about the final measures last week. They've asked us to respond to 4, 3 of them being pretty easy things to set, and mostly on Joe's side of the house. Item number 1 is course success rates. What's our goal for in-course success rates? Which Crystal ran some numbers, and we'll bring a draft to College Council to discuss. Number 2 is accreditation status. What is our goal for accreditation status? Well, if we don't put reaffirmed, they're really going to be looking at us like, what are you thinking? We hope to, be on show cause. The second 2 are actually related to the budget, which is proportion of the budget dedicated to staff and benefits, and proportion, and then the proportion of reserves. And we can get some numbers from Joe. Now, ideally in the future, they'll be looking for 1-year targets and 6-year targets. This year, they're really only looking for 1-year targets for 15, 16. So these numbers don't change that much. So this won't be as critical a discussion as the 6-year targets will be, which really should go through Senate and have a very thorough and robust discussion and connect with our institutional set standards that we submit to ACCJC. But I wanted to let this group know that this has been a mandate that we've gotten from the Chancellor's Office to respond by June 15th.
So what do you see the role of the Academic Senate in this?
Well, we will bring the suggested goals, and the only one that's really kind of a big discussion point would be the course success rates to College Council, and then I would leave it up to the Senate how they want to address the recommendation for when it comes back to College Council in April.
And they've got, how many meetings left for the end of the year? Is that
2.
It's just
Really,
too-
two? So
Yeah.
this has to get through the full Senate, does it not, or does it? What's the?
My understanding is that they don't have any requirements as to how we do it, but my personal sense is that the Senate should have a discussion on this. Now, how the Senate exec wants to make sure that it's done, given that it's not all 18 measures, we will support you in whichever direction you want to go. If you want me to present on all 18 measures and then discuss the 4 that we have to submit, we can certainly do that. However you guys want to do it, I'm there to support you.
Would you be ready to do that discussion at the next Senate meeting?
Absolutely.
So we'll agendize that then?
Sure.
But not the 18.
But not.
Yeah.
You just want to talk about the
Can
4?
we just do the 4, please?
Yeah, we can talk about the 4.
Okay, good.
And then this year, it seems like it's about establishing kind of base thresholds or thresholds, and then they'll.
And it is worth noting that all of the measures they picked, because thank God they had some smart people in the room this time, are existing measures. They didn't create a set of measures. Most of the 18 measures that we'll have to set targets from are on the scorecard already. So that's the good news. None of these are brand new things that they're creating out of thin air.
And it's probably worth mentioning that the Chancellor Harris, has created just this year a new Vice Chancellor position for institutional effectiveness, and that it's Teresa Tenya. And so she's actually building a team that is all about data metrics, establishing these goals, and as we go forward as an institution, there'll be more of this to come. So Ryan's office, Crystal's office will be heavily engaged in all this stuff.
We can throw stuff at each other now that I moved my office, so we can really tag team this quite
Are you in the building now?
I'm in the building.
Do you have an assistant yet?
Yes, I do. I have.
Oh,
I got lucky. Any other follow-up on that you guys have?
No, it's not.
So number 5 is a general heading so that we could talk about any committees that are still missing representation. The 3 that I'm concerned about on my side of my house, and then one that I've heard about, I'm still missing representatives from the committee to address College Council's functions.
Academic Senate.
Yeah, from Academic Senate.
Okay.
And we'd really like to get that together. At the last PNP meeting, I'm sure Chris can fill you in, there was a lot of discussion about College Council, how appropriate its memberships was, what types of changes we need to make to the structures, and I think that to have those conversations, we really need to have faculty at the table. The second one on my side is the realignment task force. I've been CCing the entire Senate exec, but any direction you guys can give on how you want to move forward?
That's been on, I think, on a couple of agendas that we haven't got to with that item
Yeah.
there. And,
Yeah.
I don't think the Senate has decided how it wants representation. I think one of the problems was that the Senate didn't have a full understanding of what the function of that task force would be. So I appreciate the email you sent.
Right.
I think you sent an email describing that. Now we have to convey that to the Senate so that they can decide how they want to make of that task force. Some of the questions are, would the schools be represented, or would the old divisions be represented? There's a question about whether the members of the task force would be looking at the best way to approach realignment, or whether they would actually be giving opinions on the structure that they want to see come out of this. And so that
And my answer would be yes.
So that's
All of the
gonna
above.
affect the way that we people that committee then. That task
And I will say that at least from my framework, and I can ask Kathy and Dr. Bell if they agree, I'm fine with any representation as far as how you want to do it, as long as it ends up with a structure that we think we can get to some good recommendations.
Ryan, can you remind me, what was the first committee that you were?
On College Council,
On how it should
how
comport
it should
itself.
comport itself.
Right.
Okay.
And let me just echo what Ryan said. Whatever you folks are comfortable with, whether it's quote unquote division representation or school representation, whatever you think is the best way to get people to the table to talk through all of the concerns, so that we can collectively try to come up with an answer. Thank you.
Okay. So was there one more?
There was one more that came up, and I heard this from Terry, and this was before she had to leave, so I want to make, if there's been a change since then, please let me know, but show me there were no faculty representatives assigned to the EEO committee. And then I open it up to the table if anyone has any other ones.
The EEO committee is really fairly important because, again, as we look at either the Title IX issues going forward or as we look at the hiring practices. The other one, what I don't recall, I think Terry also was very much looking for representation for the faculty hiring committee. She was pulling a group together to look at faculty hiring practices. So what we're trying to do is, what we plan to do is to develop very specific hiring practices for faculty, for managers, for classified. So Terry's trying to pull together groups to deal with each one of those, and I think she's got a request into you guys for representation.
And one of the discussions we've had in the Senate about that is perhaps using the ad hoc committee on hiring issues as our representatives there.
That'd be great.
Manny?
Yes.
One thing is, I know you all have trouble getting people to volunteer to serve on committees because they're busy. I wonder if it would make any sense, or would it be useful to share with faculty, here are all the faculty serving on committees, and we invite some of you who are not sharing or who are not serving on committees to please volunteer.
It
Like
might
to
be,
provide a list.
And we've just sort of created a list through our committee of committees of all the faculty who are serving. We're trying to update that. But since these are college-wide committees, Senate bylaws allow for the president to make recommendations and then to bring those recommendations to the Senate. So I'll suggest to Eduardo that if there is sort of a lack of faculty volunteering for these, that he make recommendations, contact people, reach out to them, and then we bring those forward. The one committee where the Senate might want to see volunteers is on the Realignment Task Force Committee, because that's a touch point.
Does Senate bylaws mandate that the person actually accept the recommendation?
No, well, they would have to, I suppose, but they mandate that the Senate approve the recommendation.
In my experience over the time that I've been here and through the various academic senate presidents, the reaching out and touching method is usually what is needed. You know, actually finding somebody who they think is qualified and do a good job.
Any other issues with committees on your end or anybody else at the table?
I got enrollment management people from the Senate meeting yesterday, which I appreciate. And the rest I'll deal with in the next item.
I get to shut up now and hand it over to Kathy.
Okay. Monday at the Senate, I distributed some summaries of what we believe the recommendations will say and the associated AIPs with those. And as I said, it's very important that there be a partnership between administration and faculty as we go forward and deal with these, and particularly the Academic Senate because of your role with governance. 3 of the recommendations have something to do with governance if you put ethics into that group as well. I would suggest, or I have suggested, that we perhaps create an ad hoc group that is prepared to do the work that's involved in dealing with these issues. I know that College Council does have that representation, but it can't just be 15 minutes on an agenda. It needs to be a work group that sits down and prioritizes what we want to do, and to the extent that we can connect the AIPs with the recommendations, focus on those AIPs first. So going ahead and doing that with governance, I think that really has to be an ad hoc group unless someone has some other suggestion. And the next recommendation had to do with evaluation materials, and that could be done, it really should be done in connection with the the various groups, the FA, and be led probably by HR. And as was raised at the Senate, other issues can be brought into this as well. How are we evaluating people, including managers? I didn't necessarily disagree with those comments. But that one can be dealt with in a group that's led by HR that has the constituency groups on it, or the bargaining groups on it. The next one is professional development. I think that should be assigned to the Professional Development Standing Committee. And then 6 and 7, if it turns out those are our recommendations, both have to do with planning. And I had suggested this at the Senate, and it had come through P&P also, that we get some reps from P&P, from IEC, from BRAC, and we absolutely want Senate representation. Now, afterwards, I got a question that I wasn't quite sure how to answer, so I'd like to bring it up here. If the Senate appoints people to P&P and IEC, should those people be coming to the Senate and reporting? Or is there another group that should be appointed to such a group
Well,
that looks at 6 and 7?
yeah, and when that came up, it made me think that the Senate has to do a better job of requesting and requiring its representatives to report to the Senate. We don't do a good job of that.
Okay.
P&P reps don't regularly report. BRAC reps don't regularly report. The IEC chair doesn't regularly report. They are our representatives, appointed by the Senate. They should have a much closer connection to the Senate. And that would bring the Senate, someone asked the question like, where does the Senate fit into all this? That's one way where the Senate fits
Right.
in. That our representatives are there doing that work, but we've got to do a better job.
Yeah, so for 6 and 7, again, that's going to have to be a work group that's really focused on getting a lot done.
Sure.
And Ryan can certainly lead it, chair it, perhaps with a faculty co-chair. But I like the idea of having P&P representation, BRAC representation, IEC. I just don't know how to get the Senate on there, whether it's through those appointees or whether it's from different appointees that get appointed to that group. I don't know.
Could there be one meeting that calls together these various ad hoc groups to establish a plan, and at that meeting we can ask the Senate reps and the various committees to attend and to participate in that and find their place within that.
Sure.
And I will just say from the planning component, the budget gets put together long in advance, or it should be, to make sure that we have a budget that fits the needs of the college. And so if we really want some robust faculty input into the budget needs of the college, we need to start that process almost in spring to give people enough time to really be vetting it and talking about it in fall, which means that if we want a good integrated planning process to work, we really need to get it done by December or January. Otherwise, it then gets pushed into the next year, or we do something kind of halfway in between. And I'd really like to see something that's thorough and put together and that we all commit to. So I would really hope that we can at least over the spring get enough parameters established that we can start to work out the big picture items, and then we can fill in the details when we come back in fall through some really good interactions with the Senate.
So what I think I heard is that there was a suggestion that all the shared governance group leaders, or whatever percentage of leaders that they want, maybe it's just the presidents, maybe it's the presidents and one or two others, come together with Kathy, with Ryan, and map out how these work groups would come together, what the representation would be, what the functions would be, and what the general timeline would be, so that we can then hit the ground running when those recommendations actually get to us in a few weeks. And by the way, almost any day now, possibly, or at least within a week, we should get the draft document for the errors of fact review. So when that comes in, we'll know precisely what it is that we're dealing with. But if the two of you could convene that kind of a meeting and include Dr. Bell in that, then we'll just figure out how we're going to move forward, and then get it all done at one time. So Classified Senate, Academic Senate, Management Association, associate students, invite them, have a reps there, map this out. Does that make sense? Does that work?
I should have also said that when we discussed accreditation at P&P, that committee felt that perhaps College Council would be the best committee to oversee the work of accreditation and to ensure that it's done. You're on that committee. It's got a large group. It has the leaders. I think that would probably be a better group than P&P to oversee and make sure that it's done. But then we discussed the fact that College Council doesn't really have a management role. It has a sort of communication role, and maybe we need to look as you're putting together a group to look at College Council, maybe in light of what the work that has to be done for accreditation, look at it perhaps a little bit differently, and maybe make a few changes to it. But I would say that group should oversee it. That makes sense to me.
And then we can call special meetings at College Council as need be, as the timeline dictates. We don't
Correct.
have to just do once a month meetings if in fact there's a reason for that.
Right, and the ad hoc group should be going and reporting there.
Right.
And this is where we stand, these are our plans, this is our timeline, these are our steps, so that it's overseen and it gets the attention it deserves. Thank you.
Professional development, I think this was one you guys asked to be put on the agenda.
Or maybe we made enough progress on professional development, we're in good shape.
Since it says professional development APL, I'm trying to read Eduardo's mind. And I think he added APL to this because when 6030 came up in front of the Senate, for example, the strongest voices against it were Dr. Klein, Valerie Foster, Apple representatives, essentially. And I think he was going to suggest that maybe to see if there was anything the administration could do to ensure that Apple is on board with it as we move forward with professional development. I know the Professional Development Committee recognizes that as we make the transition from Apple to the comprehensive plan, that we're going to need some of Apple members' expertise, and we've reached out. We've invited Sheila Rose to collaborate with a member of the Faculty Senate Committee to create the new faculty seminars. We can't let down those 36 folks just because we're making this transition. So we are recognizing that. We recognize there'll be a part for them within the transition. So I think we'd like a little bit more support from them related to the developing plan for professional development.
Well, I agree with what you said in terms of particularly working together on a new faculty orientation. We did talk about that at the last Professional Development Committee. I've talked to Pat about it. I met with Sheila this morning. We made a few comments when we looked at the curriculum, and they're going to make some revisions to it. Brock was there as well. And they're going to show it to me. I'm going to bring it when I meet with the Faculty Development Committee. I think it's next week. I'll bring a list so that there's input and just overall input into the big items, not the little details, but
I think you were going to also talk to the deans as well, because
Yes.
they may want to add some aspect to the curriculum that they think is important.
yeah, it was discussed at the Dean's meeting this morning. It will be back on the Dean's meeting next Wednesday. They do want input into it, and yeah, I think it was a good meeting today. I think we're going to do fine. They understand about the collaboration between Sheila and a co-leader from your group, and I don't anticipate a problem.
And so let me speak very specifically to Manny's request that the administration work with the APL folks to be, if you will, a tad bit more collaborative in the new model. I can say that I've had 2 or 3 conversations with Sheila and Dr. Foster and some of those other folks on the topic. They are beginning to understand, I think. I've had very specific conversations with Dr. Klein about this, one as late as yesterday morning. Dr. Brock and I usually talk. He comes in early, so on my drive in, I will often just call and we'll do 30 minutes on, well, I only live 10 minutes away, but we end up doing 15 minutes on idling in the parking lot as we continue to talk. But anyway, and the point of this is I do believe Brock truly understands where we're going and where we need to go, and I fully expect that he is going to be fully supportive of Dr. Scott in what's happening here, and I think he will be. But to be very clear, the policy 60/30 is the rule of the land, okay? That's the direction we're going to go. And we want everybody to participate, for sure, but if for some reason some people just can't, won't, are not comfortable, we fully expect and would respect their desire to do other things. But that's where we're going.
Yeah, it's going to be inclusive, and it's going to come into the committee. I don't think there's any doubt about that at this point.
Yeah.
There is going to be a transition period that we probably need to discuss more extensively in the
That's right, we
PD
do.
committee.
We do. In addition to the new faculty orientation, you have to look at any PD needs ready for fall, and we discussed maybe a focus on equity, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so there does need to be some work to be done, and probably more use of their activities.
And there's another topic, and I'm just going to throw it in here real quick because it's been one that's concerning me, is Beverly Tate is retiring.
Right.
So it's going to leave a vacancy in the diversity position that we have. And so the question is, what do we do with that? One option, of course, is to fold the functions into the PD activities. Another option is to bring somebody else to the table. But what I want to make sure is, and one of my favorite words these days is horizontal, that whatever we do, it's horizontally across the institution, and it doesn't do one of these things.
Yeah.
We're good at these things, we need to do this. So this diversity release time position should be part of the overall professional development plan to some degree,
To some degree.
And
except for the compliance.
Because there's
aspect.
activities that won't be part of PD necessarily.
Right, there are
but to
compliance
some-
activities.
if new faculty orientation would include a lens on equity, then I would say we should embed high impact practices within the curriculum for the new faculty, and that would be a
So
focus.
maybe we should send that developing curriculum to
Yeah.
you to look at
Yeah,
that?
so
Yes.
it would include high impact practices such as experiential learning,
We've
the
spoken
service
spoken
learning,
about
the
that.
things that we've talked about. I think that would be a really good foundation for the orientation to new faculty. So that way they can build their syllabi and their curriculum with that already in mind. For many of us who, if we've taught for a long time, it's harder for us to deconstruct what we've already built over time. But these are new teachers, so we'll be able to have them built from the ground up.
So I think Manny's, one second, I think Manny's point is well taken in that not only are we talking about the new faculty orientation, but where are we going as institutionally with the professional development?
Right,
and all
because fall will begin probably before we
Before
have
we
this
know
in
it,
place.
exactly right.
Yes.
Faculty would love to do service learning, but you can't do service learning with 45 students and 5 classes of 45 students. It is not possible. It is not humanly possible. So our fantasy of high impact practices do not bear what is happening in our classrooms and our current closing years.
I had a question that you mentioned, Bev Tate, and she's currently serving 3 roles, I think, right? She was diversity, CDI rep, she was basic skills, and she was doing new faculty orientation. So new faculty orientation, we've got a plan for that. Is there a plan to replace, do we have a new CDI rep and a new basic skills rep?
There will be.
Well, before you answer that, the BSI we talked about last week, and Kathy's working on that.
Okay.
But the CDI, there isn't a plan yet because in our minds we're trying to figure out its rightful place in the new
Right.
framework. BSI.
BSI?
Yeah, BSI, we are going to have someone.
Okay.
And I do need to address it. I have not yet. I have asked perhaps someone like Amy if they would help oversee it from an administrative perspective. But I need a faculty person in there. And perhaps we can use the new process to go out and do that. Because we also have that issue with study abroad. Because we're losing the student study abroad person. So,
It's a real blow.
Yeah,
So-
he knows.
Beverly too, but Joe's a real blow when it comes
Yeah.
to.
so anyways, for both of those, maybe those can be the first 2 that we push out with.
With job descriptions
With-
and so on. Yes, sure.
I just need to do it. But I do recognize we need Basic Skills Initiative because we have a report due fairly soon.
I think.
Oh, and the other thing we didn't talk about in terms of PD is the fact that we need to hire the PD director. And actually we didn't we said we were gonna, a couple of us were gonna work on that.
You and I were gonna get
You
together
and me,
to talk
in our
about the
spare
job
time.
description. We didn't even schedule it.
Right, we didn't schedule time because we have no time.
Right.
But yeah, we need to do that. I've got the one from College of the Canyons. I think it will match up fairly well with what we've put into 60/30.
So do you want to send me an email about when you're available, and I'll try and...
I will do that.
Okay.
I will add it to my list again, because who knows what I did with the other list. But yeah, I would be happy to do that. And that's one of the giant steps we need to, in terms of the transition.
So the next item is NCNs, but I know we've been able to find 2/3 of the information.
I mean, we
given
can
that-
show it to people as a starting point.
Well, given that Eduardo's not here, do you guys want to delay this till next meeting? I mean, there's nothing time sensitive about it, but we did find,
This is where we're looking at courses like the PE courses or others like that.
this was where we were looking at some comparisons about
That's
other
right.
market basket colleges,
Right.
but some were harder to find the information on than others, and I'd like to thank Marina for searching out some of that.
So it looks like we've got data on 1, 2, 3,
Sure.
Well,
Six.
5 plus us.
yeah, 5 plus us, so we're missing 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll give you what we've got right now.
Yeah, I
if you
think,
want.
yeah, sure.
Don't give one to Julie.
She's done her own, don't worry. But I'll take yours too.
Okay.
No, give her one.
Julie, you want to pass it on to Eduardo?
If you
Wherever
can find
he
him
may
in,
be.
if you can find him in Mexico.
Pat, I do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. What, did I not send that over here? I'm sorry. I forgot to give one to this side of the room.
We'll share.
Here.
That's good. We'll share. You need one, Kathy. It's your gig.
I think there's some more too.
Yeah, we have got one.
Okay, I'm sorry. So, I don't, Marina, I mean, part of this committee, but I don't, were these all the courses, or were there more that we were, is this one we were looking at?
These are the ones you asked
I
for.
think there were some PE classes, weren't there, we asked for that?
That was a separate
Yeah, that was a
discussion.
definition, that's what I thought.
So this list came from the academic senate requesting these, just,
No.
where'd the list of classes
I
come
was
from?
pulling them from high demand classes,
Okay. Okay.
and looking at just the average type course. So,
East LA and Cerritos, you want to avoid.
yeah, go try teaching English.
We don't
at,
seem that out of line.
That's horrible.
Go teach reading in
We can El
English
Camino,
at-
we can El Camino,
LA.
in Long Beach, wow.
Long Beach is pretty good.
You know, all these
Places.
40s.
No, you're right.
Mm. Okay,
But
so-
in general, it needs to be,
By the way, Ryan came from East LA College, just so you know.
It was already that way before I got here.
he changed them, he made them that way.
I recommended them going to 60, but nobody listened. No, I'm joking.
Okay, so this is information.
In general, I don't feel that we have a very equitable system here, because I understand that Julie's over there and she's got 45, and I don't understand why some of the other PE type classes, quote, lecture type classes are at, 35 or 30. It doesn't make sense to me. I question whether that number should even be on the course outline of record, because that isn't where the number is going to be determined. It's a working condition item, it's negotiated. And by having them on there, it complicates things. But we need to have some kind of a process for looking at the numbers and making it more equitable, because then perhaps we can bring some of the ones that are at 45 down just a little bit, because they are the ones that are funding the rest of the college. I don't disagree with that.
And I will say, from my historical search, what I think happened, and it's only from conjecture from looking at these type of things and going back to 1982 or whatever that document was from.
I think it was 1982.
Yeah. Wow. I think that some of the courses were actually set based on the class facility
At that
physical
time.
size at that point, and then nobody ever changed it. And what we don't want is for the facilities to be driving the pedagogy rather than vice versa. Because here we are getting ready to do a Centennial Facilities Master Plan, and if these lecture PE classes should be larger so that we could spread the overall equity, then we need to know that, because otherwise people are going to go in and say, yep, I have 30 in my class, that's how big a classroom I need. and then we end up stuck with the same situation without ever having a discussion on it.
Well, and two, we could decide, not we could decide, but maybe some classes really do have a big writing requirement and need to be slightly smaller, but other ones are going to have to be a little bit bigger to make up for it. Maybe some we want to have service learning as a component, and then other ones would have to be a little bit bigger. I mean, we are not funded adequately as community colleges in California. That's the basic problem. So we're fighting over the fact that we're not funded properly. We can only do what we can do. Where we can add in more LGI and have certain classes be big lecture halls so that other classes can be smaller and more, faculty are more able to do group type work. I'm not opposed to that at all. It's just, I think, but faculty don't want to go to other faculty and say, I think your NCM is too high. You know, it's just a thing that faculty don't say to other faculty. So we need to have some kind of mechanism for sitting down and just having the tough conversation.
Sure.
And people want to avoid it, which means that nothing happens. And another part of this is distance ed. You know, particularly where you got model courses, the curriculum is already there for you. Should your class be 10 people smaller than psychology 1? I don't think so. You know, because distance ed is it's not a discipline, it's a mode. You know, so, you know, is it fair for people who teach distance ed, particularly in a model course where everything is there for them, to have fewer students than someone who's doing a lecture? We need to have these hard conversations.
You know, it is a mode, but the requirements are much more contact, right, with instructor and student. And with the instructor overseeing student-to-student contact.
Well, it's regular. The definition of regular and effective is a very broad definition. And so there's really a lot of latitude in that in terms of what's defined, and it really depends upon a lot of good distance ed faculty have learned over the years that if you have student cohorts actually working with themselves and basically, you know, in groups, if you will, and the teacher just touches them every once in a while to see what they're doing, have things come in. And that's what these model courses are designed to do, and work out pretty well, I think.
You know, if I'm in English though teaching a model course, I'm still reading the same number of essays.
Which is, I think, getting to Kathy's
Correct.
point about...
But why would you have fewer students than if you run a face-to-face?
Yeah, which is what Kathy's point about not every course is created equal.
Sure.
Well, and my doctoral program was mostly online, and it was a lot of the students just going back and forth and commenting on other students' things, and the teacher just has to go in there periodically, doesn't have to read every single post, but, you know, spot check, make sure people are doing the right thing, look how many postings they're doing. I mean, nothing is perfect, and again, it falls back to the fact that we're just not funded properly, so we're doing the best we can with what we're funded.
My doctoral program was not online, but every once in a while I'd have a faculty member who would do that and who would include it in the face-to-face. And what he would do is he would just throw a question in now and then. He would, you know, there's a group of us working together, and then out of left field, he'd drop this question bomb on us. He said, because he was reading our stuff, and he would say, well, what about this? And then he would send us off on another route, and then we would respond to that, and then, and usually it was a pretty productive way of us knowing that he was there, and secondly, of him making sure that we were learning, quote unquote, in the direction that he wanted us to learn.
Yes. The one difference would be is that students who take online classes really have to be, to a large extent, independent learners. Bob and I in a doctoral program are probably independent learners. But that would speak to having not be really high, because our students they need assistance. And they need to be prodded, and you need to get this in. And I don't discount that. But it's just a discussion. It's a discussion.
So where do you see all of this beginning?
That's right.
Does it
is this
begin?
discussion
Yeah,
gonna
does
take
it
place?
begin in the departments? Does it begin with enrollment management? Does it begin? Where does it begin?
Well, Brian, I mean, it could begin with the group that looks at the contract. I mean, it could begin there.
In the contract, and
That
check
hasn't
me
worked.
on this, Julie, right?
That hasn't worked.
Okay,
Right.
Julie and I can go out to lunch and we'll figure it out.
But seriously, in the contract that we just signed with the FA, there's language in there that says that we will get together with the FA and begin to develop a plan to look at normal closing. They basically, on the basis of enrollment management and scheduling techniques, there was kind of agreement that we'll just let alone for this contract, but we will get together and try to sort this out. And I think that, as Danny said at the Academic Senate meeting the other day, there are things that just clearly overlap between 10+1 and working conditions. And when that happens, it probably makes sense for both the Academic Senate and the FA to sit down together with the administration and work through the topics.
Yeah.
Because of that overlap, I think he was absolutely correct. And we've tried to have that wedge between the two, and sometimes that works, but oftentimes it doesn't work, and then we end up where we are. So I would say that, again, a working group at the appropriate time, representatives from the FA, Academic Senate, Enrollment Management Committee, and office come together and just start tackling it. It's a messy subject.
Well, and we have to look at it in terms of the way in which we're funded. You know, we can't disregard that.
Yeah.
It's a balance, and if we want to have funds to do other things, we want to hire a lot of full-time faculty. We want to have sufficient classified staff. We can't do it without having a certain level of enrollment, because that's how we're paid. Doesn't mean I wish it weren't different. I do, but it isn't.
New York does $13,000 per FTEs.
We do 4,600.
It's about
You see what I mean? That's the problem.
about 10 to 11,000 difference in a lot of states.
Wow.
You can imagine the class sizes you can have with that.
But it's a balance. You can have. I think you want to ensure that students have some experiences where they're in smaller classes, and then other experiences they may have to be in larger classes, just because that's the reality of our funding system. And we just make a decision about what those are.
So is there agreement then that it's at some time in I was going to say not too distant future, but this is a topic where maybe in the summer we can pull some people together on this. I think we can figure out if there's a need for additional compensation for something like this. I'd be more than happy to find it and just start the conversation, between the FA, the Academic Senate, and our group, and just slowly begin to work our way through this.
I think it'd be a lot easier, because really, I don't know how we can serve too many more committees.
Well, that's the point.
And this is just a big issue. It's going to take a lot of meetings, and they can't be once a month.
Big audacious goal.
You just need to meet regularly, and so you can just be discussing these ideas. So
Right.
I don't see how a committee like this could really meet this spring. I think the summer would be a good time.
I mean,
It's
we can't
quiet.
solve this in the next 5 weeks?
Well, that's
So,
what I mean.
you know,
So I
this
just don't think
is what they call a big audacious goal, to try to sort this out. So
Yeah.
I think some extraordinary measures might be appropriate on something like this.
And maybe you have
And
someone.
it's going to take some time to figure it out. It's not going to happen quickly.
I think CNI had this, often has this discussion. I think maybe CNI
That's exactly what I was
should-
going to say.
Should sit on this committee too.
Yes, because they've seen all these CORs. They know, I don't think they're not going to speak for all faculty, but they know the types of work that's involved, what can be considered more of a lecture type course. If there is a big writing requirement, it should be listed somewhere in the COR.
It also has to do with number of hours of load too. I mean, it very well may be that certain social science faculty, English faculty, based upon the work that they have to do, what's considered a full-time load for them is reduced in some reasonable way in order to compensate.
It is
That's
worth
a
noting
working
that's-
condition. That's something that the FA would get involved in, but that's why all groups need to be at the table so we can sort this out.
Before you feel too bad for the LA folks in English, because I know they have a 12-hour load.
Oh, well.
Oh, you shouldn't have taught them right.
So you don't have to feel too bad.
Well, I think they have a very high dropout rate as well.
I don't
You
think
may
there's
start
3
with
unit
45
1As.
students, but you may.
And they are 3-unit
They're
classes.
3
as
unit
well.
1As. So they're teaching
4 classes,
4 classes of 45.
so 180 students.
They have 180
That's
students.
just mind-boggling. But I think there's a very large, very high
It's not
dropout
bad.
rate.
It's not bad. It's pretty in line with the rest of the disciplines.
But anyway, these are the kinds of conversations that we would, and by the way, as you're talking, we look at the numbers, we look at data, we try to be informed by other people's experiences, and although I know we've got the best students anywhere, but still, you know, it was a tentative joke.
Well, and facilities plays into it too, because can we find a couple of places to have a couple more large lecture halls? Some classes, are not going to be that problematic if we put it into that kind of a format.
Army tanks.
Well, I look at a class, for an example,
Army
Health Ed 44. It's kind of a classic example of a class that can be larger in terms of what's taught in that particular class. So there are some that are throughout our curriculum where you can get some larger numbers.
Fruit.
Yeah.
Continuing the Kathy show, standardized schedule.
This isn't my topic.
Oh, well, it came from you
well,
guys, but.
We're still working with our schedule. We're trying to be flexible where we can. We're trying to meet student need as our priority. And I don't know what else I can say. Yes.
Have deans been told that, to be flexible when they can?
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot because we were, I forget what came up, but there was some issue where students can't go at certain times, and we're trying to get a certain number of blocks in, because we have a lot of students and we have a lot of demand. And one of the time blocks was going into 10:30, and I was like, you can't have class go until 10:30. I mean, that's just way too late. I mean, I was an evening student, I would have just passed out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're trying, and how can we move this over here to,
Okay.
we are always thinking of students when we're doing it.
Yeah.
And also, we have to think of faculty too, because we have faculty who are teaching in other places, they can't get here until a certain time, so there's no point in moving math here because the faculty aren't going to be able to get here then,
Yeah.
and then we're not going to have teachers, so what's the point?
Even on overload assignments, you can't expect someone to work that late with the night and then be fresh for the next morning to do or whatever else.
Yeah, we were looking at, we ended up making some changes to the summer schedule because one of the time blocks started at like 8. I was like, you can't start a class at 8. So we ended up moving one of them, but then we had to make others flexible so that it worked for the math people who couldn't get here. So yeah, we do look at that all the time, and it's
Well,
a giant
we have
issue.
kind of a closed program in that our students are taking our classes to get certificates.
Mhm.
And we wanted to start a class at 8 a.m. because it's traditionally started at 8 a.m. and it fits into our sequence. We had 3 classes offered, and our dean refused to let us do that. The class had to start at 7:30 because the block starts at 7:30.
Well,
was
but then
kind
the
of
question
like-
too would be, your students may want to be taking a history class, and is your different scheduling going to prevent students from being able to take the next time slot? Are they going to be 20 minutes off or half an hour off for the next slot? Then that becomes a problem for the students.
Well, how do we know how much of a problem that is? Because we know these students, they tend to take our classes and branch out a little bit to 1 or 2 other things.
Well, are they
And it
getting
didn't seem, maybe during the school year it would be a bigger issue, but during summer, we didn't feel like it was a major issue. And yet we couldn't get him to budge on that.
Well, and I've been really strict with this. I mean, if it's going into another time slot, unless we know for a fact that students aren't taking other classes, like we do have students in a library digitization. I can't ever say that. But some of them, and I don't even know if that was an example, but they're not taking other classes. They come in for that one class. So in cases where we know that, we can certainly be flexible. But if they're pursuing a degree, they're going to have to take other classes, and I don't want to block them from being able to take that math class or that political science class.
But this ran to noon, it was an 8 a.m. to noon class. And so noon seemed to be probably a logical breaking point for that schedule. So we didn't feel like it conflicted. He wanted to run 7:30 to 11:30, like.
Yeah, I don't have a block in front of me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
we're
was just
trying
sort of
to make
intransigent
exceptions as
yeah.
minimal as possible, because then students, when they're creating their schedule, it just gets confusing.
We have a new he now?
Huh?
Is it a new he
Oh,
or the
Paul.
old he?
Paul.
The current he?
Yes, Paul Drill.
Okay.
And maybe he just doesn't know the programs that well, and he's trying to,
Figure it out.
walk a kind of a narrow path. Is
But,
there some evidence that this has helped? Are there more classes open? Are we offering more sections because we've done this? What benefit has this brought to the college?
Well, I wasn't here prior to this, so I do know that we have looked at student schedules and trying to put a schedule together when you have unending different start times. It is complete mass
Cynthia,
confusion.
Can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
So this is a good question that Chris is asking. You know, I remember, I've been here now 10 years, and up until we made some of these adjustments, we were constantly hearing about students running into conflicts with not being able to get classes. We also had an FTS collection problem because we were shortchanging hours, and we had audit exceptions because we were reporting more FTS that could be generated on the basis of these conflicting schedules, and auditors picked up on it. So from your counselor's perspective or from student services perspective, have you heard students are having an easier time building their schedules as a result of the shifts, or hasn't made any difference? Have you heard anything?
Anecdotally, I can tell you we haven't had concerns expressed from students about the inability to build their class schedules.
But did we before though?
We did, yes.
Yeah, so the point is making the changes, we've had much less concern about that.
Right.
But we used to hear a lot about it.
Yes.
And then we had the audit thing on top of that.
Yeah, they can build their work schedules and, travel time from school to work or home to tend to family responsibilities much more easily now that there's a standardized start time for evening, for morning.
Is there any evidence that we're offering more sections? Would enrollment management be able to tell us that? Because I understood that was going way back to Alan Dooley. That was the reason we were doing this, is that classrooms were not being used regularly.
Well, that
There were holes in the schedule,
I-
and that we were gonna compress everything together so we could,
yeah,
I can
add
tell
more
you
classes.
from
Yeah.
sitting on Dean's Council during the time when we didn't have this, I do recall that it was really a nightmare for the deans to try and sit down and figure out who was using which room and to ensure we were maximizing space to fit in as many sections as possible.
particularly during peak times.
Yes,
Um,
and so then this process helped the deans, I think Dr. Bell started the conversation with the deans about really understanding that we have to figure out how to maximize room usage.
And we're gonna, Julie, 1 second, I promise. And then the other issue is that in general, we've offered a lot more sections
Yes.
in the past few years in order to recapture that 10-11, that 10-11 and that 11-12 FTS that we had to recapture. And the only way one of the only ways we were able to do this was by better enrollment management, better space utilization, all of these things. And,
It is true. We have higher FTES
right.
this spring than we did last spring by quite a bit, and about 200 fewer sections. So we are being more efficient, using our money more carefully. I just can't speak to a time when we didn't have it because I wasn't here.
I do think that some evidence about that,
Yeah.
that was disseminated to the campus, would make people feel more positive towards the whole idea of this standardized scheduling. People are kind of like, why did you do this to us?
Why don't we do this? Ryan, why don't you talk to Crystal about an institutional research, I forget what we call those things, but she does these reports.
Findings.
About the whole topic of the block scheduling, actually, or you just call it the more efficient scheduling, the standardized scheduling. And kind of a comparison between how we used to do it and what we're doing now, what the impact of that has been. And so maybe we can begin to prepare something. Julie?
It is not statistically possible to put 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8-hour classes in the same block. It's just not a possibility. So what happens is you also have science classes that are taking up an entire Tuesday or an entire Thursday. They may start at the appropriate time that you have now deemed is God's time, but if they're taking all of Thursday for their one class, that leaves Tuesday as a fallow day. And I understand it fits the faculty schedule because all of Tuesday they have one group and all of Thursday they have another group, but for the student, that opposite day is completely washed out, gone. And it's not working for our students.
So that's a significant enrollment management committee discussion.
Yeah, I would ask exactly if you could give me specific examples of what you're talking
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have quite a few lab classes that spend an entire 4 or 5 hour stretch on one day. So that means the other day, and then that block is completely gone.
Well, none of our labs are jam-packed all the time. I know
It
that.
doesn't matter. It's a Tuesday all-day lab.
Right.
It's not a Tuesday, Thursday 2 hour block. It's a
Yeah.
4 hour lab on Thursday, which means that that student can't take a Tuesday
Okay,
class for those
okay.
4
Yeah,
hours.
so that's clearly,
Okay, I would have to look at that. I'd have to look at it. I'm
Because
not-
I
I'm
have
not
students
sure.
going, I have children attending our school.
Okay.
I understand exactly what's happened to this schedule. So let me tell you what's happening to our children who are here, is that that's what's happening.
Okay.
Plus, if you have a 5 hour English class, or math class, excuse me, then that next hour is not the same hour as it would be for a 3 hour social sciences class. So
Correct.
it is not possible to have a block for all of our classes.
I mean,
just not.
it's a complicated block. I won't say otherwise, because we have this unit, this many hour classes, this hour classes, this hour classes.
But-
We've tried to standardize it as much
Right.
as possible, given the fact that we have different time.
and the reality is, this is going to be a long-term fix, because through our C&I process and our scheduling process, we've allowed these things to occur. We've allowed math classes that are 5 hours. We've allowed 4-hour English, 101, English 1. We've allowed these things. At the time, we did so thinking it was the best thing to do for our students, and it was, but then we found out perhaps otherwise. So these are things that are going to have to be fixed over an extended period of time. And now we've got the technology to do that through the banner system, but also we're also buying the other software. You want to talk about that for a second?
We're buying enrollment, well, we've already bought it, enrollment
Right.
management software, so they can really get a much better look at what's happening with all of our classes. We don't have it up and running yet, so I won't go into it, but it will help us. It'll give us a lot of historical information, be able to make our analysis of what we're doing and how effective it is much easier.
Bless you.
Bless you.
And help us see the balance of things and what we need to do to reach our FTES targets in a way that's most helpful to students.
Right. This is the citrus software,
Right.
right? Yeah.
And I would add, that's why I prefaced my comment with the anecdotally speaking. I do agree if we had some hard evidence, it would be better to inform our practices with whatever hard evidence we can find about number of sections offered, and you'd get an overall big picture.
Anything else on standardized scheduling?
It's a work in progress.
Well,
But I don't mean that facetiously. I mean, we're really trying to and we made some progress on it. And we'll make more.
yeah, I mean, we're looking at it, and where things aren't making sense, we are trying to make adjustments, and we know we're making exceptions. I'm trying to keep them limited, because if you make too many exceptions, and you just have start times every 5 minutes again, which is very difficult to make a schedule when you've got start times that have absolutely no consistency at all.
I remember anecdotally, again, I used to hear it a lot, students could complain bitterly that they would get to their class 12, 15, 20 minutes late, and the faculty would sometimes literally lock the door and say, you can't come in. And we set them up for that, because that was the only way they could build a schedule, and they had these overlapping classes. And so we don't hear that hue and cry anymore, but it was happening a great deal.
It's happening with faculty too.
Yeah, that's happening.
When
The
they
students
overlap
lock the door on you, Chris?
And to run across campus to get some.
Well, when they had overlaps, they would
That was
request
part of our
instructor
healthcare
approval. So
program.
we had a process
Right.
where a student would get approval. So if they were leaving my class and my class finished 15 minutes after yours began, you and I would work out arrangements so the receiving faculty member would make a statement to make sure the students made up those minutes. Our auditors have said you were doing that, but you really can't do that because we had no way to verify
The
that
auditors
those minutes
nailed us
were
on
made.
that.
So that was
Really?
Oh,
that was something we found
it
out
cost us
when we
a lot
were
of
we
money.
had, yeah, we had students who were in fact, as an auditor said to me when I first gathered, a student can't be in two places at the same time, Doctor. And I said, I know that. He said, well, look at this. So that's another reason why we had to look at coming up with more standard start times, because we were
It's like our
disadvantaged
work
students.
schedule arranged like that.
Yeah, exactly. I'll make
That's
it
called
up.
double dipping.
Okay.
All right, next item up was a request from the Senate Human Resource Hiring Committee, problems. committee's problems, I should say.
So I asked, Terry's out, and she's dealing with some personal needs that she's dealing with, and she's doing quite well, but she's out for a while. She'll be back, I think, next week. I hope next week. So I asked Joe to come in and pinch hit for her and kind of give the academic senate an update of where we are with the hiring committees for the 36 faculty.
Sure. So Terry and I met with Suzanne Anderson and Mark Whitworth regarding concerns that are being brought to their attention. There were some candidates who were concerned that the system was not user-friendly. There were some candidates who felt like they turned in the information that was requested in the actual recruitment. For some reason, it wasn't attached to their application. There were questions about the equivalency process, the ability for human resources to verify that minimum requirements or qualifications were being met, and that the application was being forwarded to the pool for the selection committee to do a review. So Terry and I met with Suzanne and Mark. We met previous to that by phone. We followed up in writing about some of the concerns that they had. Many of the applicants that have submitted their documents for a recruitment were moved from the process into the pool for the for the selection committee to do a review, the normal process. There were people or applicants who did not submit all of the materials or the correct materials by the deadline. And my understanding is that Title V states that all materials that are requested in a recruitment must be filed before the closing of the recruitment or by the filing date and deadline. So there were a number of applicants that were rejected. There were applicants who called and said that we have questions, we thought we submitted, we thought we did what we were supposed to do. Human Resources on a case-by-case basis looked at that information, and if they were unsure, they erred on the side of the candidate and submitted that application into the pool for the selection committee to review. There were questions about degree, what I call degree umbrellas. For example, there was an application for a sports psychologist. The committee, I believe, was under the impression that that application was rejected. However, the applicant that was being considered had enough of a development background that should have qualified them for the recruitment process. After talking with Human Resources, I was informed that that candidate or that applicant was actually put into the pool and moved forward for the selection committee. The equivalency process, I think there's some miscommunication, but the equivalency process, from what I understand, HR does a review of the minimum qualifications to make sure that the materials are there by the deadline that was submitted, the deadline of the recruitment. Those materials are provided to the selection committee. The selection committee makes a determination if they meet the minimum requirements. If there's a need at that point for equivalency, or if the applicant requests equivalency, it then goes to the academic senate, and there's a committee that does a review. Out of 3,217 applications for 36 positions, there was a rejection rate. Initially, while things were being reconciled, it was about 45%. When all it was said and done, it was 38.9%, so just under 39%, which for a brand new applicant tracking system and for one that is established is a relatively good number. Sounds very high, but it's a relatively good number.
39%.
And in the dean's meeting this morning, one of our deans said that, and he was relatively confident about it, that Mount SAC's rejection rate was 65%.
Yeah, and we actually, from what I understand, we called other schools to see what their rejection rate was, and the majority of them were higher than the 39%.
In this presentation, did you say that for 4 days the software was working intermittently? Because I didn't know that.
I did not say it, but thank you, because our initial understanding was that the first week that we had recruitments closing, there was a glitch in the system where the system has a time, not a timestamp, but a time out type of function. Well, it was set to East Coast time rather than West Coast time. So at 9 o'clock in the evening, it was closing out instead of midnight. It actually was not 4 or 5 days. It was just the Monday and the Tuesday. And then so Monday, when we realized we had a problem, Tuesday morning, Human Resources called our software company, Cornerstone On Demand, and said, we have the issue, fix it. They told us they fixed it. They did not. Tuesday night, we had the same issue. So Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, Human Resources actually woke up. There were people in HR who woke up very early and closed down the recruitment at midnight. So for 2 days, we had the issue. So the 2 days that we had the recruitments that were closing, we then went back and we looked at them. I think psychology was one, philosophy was another, I think English was a third. Psychology, because of that and some other concerns, has been extended. And I think it's being extended for 2, maybe 3 weeks. Philosophy, the selection committee, from what I understand today, the selection committee had extended the criteria review of the documents, but as of today, have moved forward with 7 applicants for the interview process, so they're happy. Not thrilled, but happy. So we have a very qualified and robust pool of applicants, and we're moving forward.
And I was in the dean's meeting briefly this morning, about 15, 20 minutes, and one of the things I asked the deans, and they are the hiring committee chairs. If not all the hiring committee chairs, they represent the majority, right? And each one of them said that the committees that they were chairing were going fine. They were satisfied with that. In fact, we had checked with them prior to that, and then on top of that, I said, well, how does your faculty feel about it? And most said the faculty were okay.
How do they know?
Well, because the faculty on their committees. So they asked the faculty hadn't commented, the faculty hadn't complained bitterly. At least not that anybody shared this morning, Julie.
But how would the faculty on the committee know that there were those problems with the
Did Paul Price tell you that
applicant?
we complained bitterly?
Yes.
No, he didn't. No, let me answer the question. So specifically, I asked the question, on the hiring committees that you chair, are your faculty satisfied with the scope, the depth, the quality of the pools? The answer was yes.
Okay.
Were there any issues that anybody really felt strongly about? No one voiced any issues, at least not this morning. We know that we had 25 or so problems that HR resolved and erred on the side of the applicant.
Oh,
And we also know,
I think it was about 15. And
15.
5 of them moved into the.
but we also know that any applicant who called in and had issues, HR worked very, very hard. The biggest challenge, of course, is simply this. We happened to launch a new technology tool called Cornerstone on Demand, applicant tracking system, at the time that we had the highest number of faculty we've hired here in probably 15, 20 years at one time. It was a tough decision to make. One of the reasons why we made that decision, of course we had no idea we were going to have the issues that we did, but one of the reasons we made that decision is because HR could not have humanly processed 3,222 applications, which is the last number that I heard that they had that came in for these positions. 3,217, 3,217 applications came in, of which 45% had initially been rejected. Once they went back and they cleaned things up, it went down to 38.9%, I think I heard you say. And also, I happen to be on a lot of listservs, and one of them I'm on as the Chief Human Resources Officers, and not recently, but like a month or so ago, the topic of applicant tracking systems came up, and the basic conversation was everybody who gets them, A, 2-3 years later loves them, B, hated the 2-3 years to get to the loving part, because it was so difficult in many respects to get everybody up to speed, get the system launched, work out the bugs, and the like.
And we're fine-tuning the software system every day. We're working with the software company. Terry Hampton has actually gone to schools who have Cornerstone on Demand for the applicant tracking system and has filed applications to see what their improvements were that we could actually have made part of our system. It's working. It's
Yeah,
moving
she's
in
had
the
3
right
job
direction.
offers, it's great.
I'm on a hiring committee right now. Nobody has asked me anything about what it was like to work with that system. And you seem to think you've heard things. Maybe it would be nice, being that it's a new system and we're not real comfortable with it, if there was a form that went to everybody on every hiring committee that got some input. So we had some really concrete,
And that's a good idea,
information.
but also, I don't know if Joe would mention that maybe 3-4 weeks ago, as soon as Suzanne and Mark brought this to our attention, within 2 or 3 days, this is when Julie, you were on a conference call. We had Mark, we had Mark, we had Suzanne, we had Julie on the conference call, we had Eduardo, we had Terry on a conference call, we had Joe, we had Dr. Bell, we had Kathy, we had me. And we worked through as much as we could work through that day and made commitments. One of the commitments that we made is that once we get through this, we're going to pull a committee together, a group together to really discuss in great length the good, the bad, the ugly of the experience, and then use that to inform and how do we make it better. That's not, but your idea is also a good idea that we should probably send an evaluation form of some sort around to all the committee members for all 36 committees and say,
I think you'd get some,
I think
some
it's a
really good
and say,
input.
what
from
did
that.
you,
Yeah.
what did you know,
Yeah.
what did you think?
Yeah.
I think that would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, what would
That
make
would
it easier,
inform
what
that
would make it
group.
better, yeah.
That would inform it.
When the applications were done on paper, what was the rejection rate?
I don't know.
And-
I'd be interested to compare them to.
And it was a good question this morning, but I don't think anybody kept those records.
Yeah,
but we can try.
that 38.9% represents 1,250 applications. I know you said that those applicants who called in were dealt with, but what about those who didn't call in? Was there any way to contact them based on their entering the system and then their application not making it through and then reaching out to them to see if there was an issue?
There was an online help thing, and so people who had problems with the system either called in or made their concerns known through the online element. As far as HR staff reaching out to the 1,200, for example, or whatever number, I don't think they had time to do
Okay.
that.
And then the third question was, Joe, you mentioned that the software itself screened for materials, right?
I'm sorry.
The software itself screened for materials?
It does not. The
Oh.
HR technician
HR
screens to make
for
sure that
materials.
the materials that are submitted meet the minimum qualifications outlined in the job recruitment.
But what about minimum quals where sometimes there's a pre-screening by like the chair of the committee and another member to screen out based on minimum quals? Was that being done by HR only or was that being done by the chairs of the hiring?
So this-
HR only does the
Materials,
materials to see if they're there.
right.
They will notify the committee and say, this applicant is questionable. So there was a question about the EOPMS counselor, and the transcripts, if I recall, the recruitment said you needed to have a certain number of credits in diversity-related classes. So HR looked at the transcripts, and if they were unsure, they forwarded it to the pool, but they marked it as questionable, so the pool was able to make a determination if they met the minimum requirements.
And was that determination made specifically with the OPS? That was one of my questions. Was that made by the chair of that committee or was that made by the committee?
My understanding is that the selection committee reviews the materials, and if it's questioned, then there is discussion about it.
And is that consistent from hiring committee to hiring committee?
Yes.
I don't know for a fact, but you seem to.
Unless I'm interpreting something that wasn't there, my understanding is that that's the normal process.
Okay.
HR is looking to make sure that the materials are there, goes on to the selection committee. If there's a question about it, it gets moved into the pool, but it's not highlighted, but red flag.
This
Yeah.
is where candidates have to request equivalency on their application so that if they don't meet the minimum qualifications, if they check equivalency, then there's a process for that.
There's two things I was going to mention. One of the learning curve items is the number of things that they require of applicants. In one committee, I recall, they had like 11 things that were required. And that made it difficult for some of the candidates who are not as technologically comfortable, if you will, with online systems to upload all that. Another issue was somebody required samples of 5 syllabi, when in fact a couple of faculty members only really taught 2 core courses, and it was difficult for them to get it in within the timeline. And then on the equivalency issue, in the old system, the way it worked is if I were the committee chair and someone requested equivalency, it would be myself, another member of the committee. If it was a certificate, it would be usually a faculty member, and then an EEOC rep would be in the room, and we, the chair and the other individual, would look at the request, and there'd be a decision made by that group, and we'd either say yay or nay, and the EEO's person would just make sure that we were doing it on the appropriate basis and not any diversity. I think in the New World Order, I'm not sure how that works. I'm not familiar with Cornerstone by Demand, but I guess probably from a technology point of view, they just say I'm requesting equivalency.
On the application, they mark equivalency.
And then what happens after that?
So it gets moved to the selection committee. The selection committee makes a determination on the pool of candidates. If one of those candidates that is being requested to be brought in for an interview is requesting equivalency, only those candidates go to the academic senate, not everybody. So it saves the time of the academic senate to look at the candidates.
So the academic senate hiring, what academic senate? The equivalency committee. Okay, so on a faculty hire, that's how it would work, right?
I also think it's important, and I think I may not have mentioned this, but I think it's important to mention, is that two of the people in HR who actually review the documents that come in are adjunct faculty. So they know what they're looking for. They understand what needs to be moved forward. And so I just don't want to lose that point of interest.
Yeah, but just in fairness, there's always been concern about sometimes either the lack of objectivity, or I should say the lack of subjectivity, or room that is given on equivalency by HR and HR staff alone, which is why we don't allow that any longer. We want the actual hiring committee chair for she or he and the equivalency committee to make the decision. And most of that usually comes in on where we place on the salary schedule, but on the hiring thing, we've been pretty good about making sure that it bounces back to the equivalency. So it's not perfect by a long shot, but to my knowledge, of the 36 searches, only one is being delayed right now.
Extended, yeah.
And the rest of them are going forward. And the pools are, according to the chairs, and presumably the faculty that are part of the committees, are deep enough, robust enough in terms of the qualifications that they're interviewing.
I agree with what you said, though, because sometimes the minimum quals say you need a degree in X, and the faculty member has gone to a school that gives you a degree in X1, and it's not the same. And if you're not disciplined faculty looking at it, you may reject it out of hand. And they didn't apply for equivalency because they thought, this is the same thing. And it can get really confusing.
Right,
and
and that's why it's moved to the selection committee to make a determination. But the district does use the California Community College Chancellor's Office minimum requirement guidelines to make determinations. This is not something that we do internally or we make decisions about. If there's a question, it's highlighted, red flag, whatever the right phrase is, and it's moved to the selection committee to make the determination.
Is that only when the candidate asks for equivalency?
No.
No, so if something looks close but isn't, it's tagged and sent forward?
Yes.
Okay.
And because, again, my understanding is that human resources, and I've observed it, they err on the side of the candidate. They want to have an inclusive pool. But if something just is not correct, we have an obligation not to move it forward because our hands are tied with Title V.
Sure.
Any other comments about item number 10?
Can I just add, I got the information related to the academic senate budget. Can I just update everybody? Is that okay? So the total academic senate budget is just under $362,000. A big chunk of that money is tied up in reassigned time, classified salary, and employer mandated costs. And then there's $28,000, not $50,000, but $28,000 that is in the rest of the line items for supplies, duplication, postage, and there are other items. And there are already requests that have gone through. Judy Benson is the requester, and they've already been approved because there's been about $7,500 out of that $28,000 that has already been spent for supplies.
Jesse, is there a scanner on that?
I'm sorry?
A scanner? Do you have the list of things that she's requested? Because we have requested a scanner, and we absolutely have to have one. Do you have a little itemized list there?
No, we don't, but it's...
I can show Judy how to show you if she doesn't know how.
No, she's requested it, but we just haven't heard, and we have all these
I agree, 'cause
applications.
she keeps coming over to my office and
Well,
using my
I-
scanner.
Well, we ought to be able to get the academic senate a scanner, so
Well,
So you
I don't know how
said,
the request is
so
done.
about $7,500 has
has
been?
already been spent.
So what
It's already
Joe's
been
saying is
processed.
you have 21,000 or
Left.
20,000.
Wow, that's.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's enough for a scanner.
And June
And a
26th,
new coffee machine.
June's
And the deadline for using those funds this year is?
It's gone.
Well, I'm gonna meet with you guys. I'm gonna meet
We
with
only
you
told you
guys.
how much money you have, you can't spend it. You don't want
Last week.
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
But if you need a scanner, if it's not already in the works for purchasing,
It's in the works, but it's
Do you
been in
know-
the works for a while.
do you know how long?
We'll
A
We'll
month?
figure it out.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
but I want to
Is
be
that
able, I
normal?
want to
Yeah.
just be able to say, so it's not as easy with the equipment because it has to go to purchasing. The requisition goes from Judy to Dr. Bell to approve,
Uh-huh.
to purchasing, to do a review of what you're asking for compared to what we can buy.
Uh-huh.
Then it goes to IT to make sure that the setup is compatible.
Well, it
Feel
sounds
like
like
arteries
professional
hardening.
development, Tony. I understand that
So a
completely.
month is probably a good time.
I see.
We'll have
Okay,
it by
well,
fall.
Feel my arteries hardening now. Okay. Good.
Winter, this is your guys's. I don't know if you have anything new.
Maybe I can
Bring
start.
it- no.
Yeah. Let me start on this. So at the board meeting, everybody heard what I said, and this was the pledge that I made and the directive that the board gave to me as the interim superintendent president and whomever the next superintendent president is going to be. We are going to kind of cut to the chase. By November 1st, give or take a week or so, we will have a recommendation on the 16-17 calendar brought forth. The topic of winter will be extremely well vetted in the area of data, and data that is community college data as opposed to K-12 data, as to the quote-unquote impact of the stock-out period and the gap period for certain types of programs and student types. We will also take a good look at the four-year institutions, transfer institutions that our students typically matriculate to, and what are their calendars, what are their semesters, and how would winter fit into that. We'll talk about the implications and the timeline associated with technology adjustments in our student support, our student information system, and some of the adjustments to Banner to make a winter happen and make sure that we can do that. We'll look very clearly and very accurately at the financial aid impacts associated with any calendar changes and how we mitigate any impact on students. We would look at, but I don't think it would have a significant impact on students in terms of those that are on a track right now. When we took it away, it had a big impact on some students because they're planning, but if we're going to add one, it probably would help them in some respects, but we'll look at that. By that time, and clearly, by the way, in this discussion, the whole PERB thing should be resolved, and even if it's not resolved, it'll be my recommendation to move forward anyway. Certainly by that time, there'll be a superintendent president. And so what I would suggest and condone that this is another one of those extraordinary topics, and that we pull together a committee as quickly as possible, but into the summer to work with the enrollment management folks to develop a recommendation. With Ryan and Crystal on the college side providing data support. Faculty may have, Julie and others who are expert at these kind of things may want to bring in their own data, but we'll pull this group together, and we fully intend, I know Dr. Bell and I really agree on this, is that we don't want to go through this pain and suffering anymore. We want to do it right, figure it out, give the board the information. If I'm the superintendent president and some of this data works the way it is right now, I hope to be able to make a different recommendation next year. If I'm not, then the next superintendent president will deal with that. But so that was my pledge then. That continues to be my pledge now, and that's where we sit on winter. Anybody else want to share any comments on that?
The only thing I would add is the calendar committee will convene tomorrow. It's on the agenda to begin the discussion of a 16-17 calendar. So the calendar committee will start the recommendation. The committee doesn't anticipate they're going to complete that process because we only have 2 remaining meetings, March and April. No, April and May. What month is this?
It's March.
March and April, thank you, Joe. But the committee fully intends to pick up the discussion again when it convenes in September to meet the deadline of having a recommendation to College Council by their November meeting If that's done and it moves through council to the superintendent president and ultimately to the board before the end of the calendar year, that will give enough advance time for IT to make any adjustments in developing this calendar and everything that has to be in banner, sufficient time so that it doesn't impact calendars to financial aid statewide and the federal.
And I submit that there's a real imperative tied to this, so it's not just the calendar committee that needs to be engaged in this, it's also enrollment management in terms of what we're gonna do, because it has impact on FTS and when do we when do we get it, the numbers associated with it, and it's got fiscal implications. So the calendar committee can have a discussion, but I think we need kind of a super working group that includes people from that have different aspects of this. So maybe someone from Joe's area, fiscal person, someone for, one or more from fiscal, one or more from enrollment management, one or more from calendar committee. Perhaps it's chaired by Ryan, student services. We bring a group together whose sole purpose it is to talk calendar, but not just the calendar committee. Because remember, in the old days, the calendar committee was just a calendar that took a non-controversial calendar and said, okay, is this when we want our holidays? Is this when we want, do we want Columbus Day off, or do we want to trade it for, Park Place? What do we want to do here? When we need a period of time to do scheduled maintenance, as Ruben calls them periodicals. Part of the challenge we have with the current calendar is that we don't have a 3-week break, 3 or 4 week to go in and do deep cleaning in classrooms and what have you. So maybe we need somebody from facilities in that group as well. So I need someone to take this on, pull together the right people from the different constituent groups, start at ASAP, work it through the summer, hand the calendar committee and the others the output, and say, okay, here we are. And then by November, we have a recommendation that goes through enrollment management, through the calendar committee, up through college council, to whomever the superintendent president is, and then to the board. And we're done.
So I'm not sure of the role of the calendar committee then. So you'll have this summer working group comprised of all these people, and they will pull
get
together.
no break.
Okay, you get no break. They'll pull together all this data, and then they will present it to the calendar committee, and then they will.
I agree with you. If you're going the same where I am, I would prefer that the calendar committee go back to what it was years ago, which is a group of campus constituents that look at the calendar and determine sort of from an employee point of view, from a student point of view, when is the best day to take our 14 paid holidays, and when's the best time to do, what's the week between what breaks? That's the stuff they used to talk about. This we're talking about is much more philosophical, much more practical, has much greater impact on the institution, and requires informed people from different perspectives to sit down. And I didn't mention students, but students should be part of that discussion.
But faculty will also be part of this summer committee.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm just
Yeah, absolutely.
who's
And I would invite
the
you to
table.
appoint some people, yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I'd like to look at it, I need to look at it from an enrollment management perspective. When I looked at it previously, it appeared to me that we could do better in terms of FTES, which is on my mind a lot, with a winter and one summer, because the second summer session tended to be a little flat. And it wasn't a good use of our resources because of that flatness. So that's important to me. I had lunch about a month ago with the CIO at Mount Sac, and their spring, because they have a winter, their spring was really low in terms of enrollment, and they had done quite well in the fall, but their spring was so bad that it took away all the growth that they had got in the fall. And so they had no growth, and they were not going to get any extra FTES money because of that. I don't know whether it had to do at all with winter, but that scares me. And I would want to probably contact people who have winter and find out what happened. Is there any impact? Maybe it's just a Mount Sac issue. I don't know whether because we're close enough, the students wanted to come here because they could start spring early. I don't know. So those are the kinds of things I think we need to look at too. Because I would want to do it based on the fact that we can get, partly that we can hit our growth target. I don't want to be in a position where we're making it worse.
Julie.
And when we're looking at the data, is it possible to look at completion for the students who had winter versus students who don't have winter? How long does it take these students to matriculate? Is it possible that, series are easier to get through if we have a winter and a summer? I don't know. But I'd like to see what their likelihood of transfer is, the likelihood of completion is, given these scenarios.
That may be a tough analysis because the students who tend to be able to take winter tend to be the full-time students who then already have a higher rate of completion. There'd have to be some pretty advanced group comparisons to make sure that the groups are even. But, so I'm not sure, we'd have to talk with Crystal, but it'd have to be done very, very carefully for it to be meaningful.
And then the other thing is, I guess Cal State LA is changing to a semester system here.
Correct.
The CSU system is moving to many of their campuses are winter-based. They are scheduled to, and they've been redoing their curriculum for 2 years now, and they're scheduled fall of 2016 to go to a academic calendar which parallels the one we're currently on. So their spring will end early mid-May. And the last I talked to someone in that system, there's only one campus which now is holding out to keep the winter. But basically, it's a system-wide movement, not just
So
CSU.
if we did put winter in back, then it might mean that the student would have to wait until the following fall to start at Cal State LA, as opposed to being able to start.
Anyway, because they tend to graduate
More,
in June.
I would agree. I would agree. So, I mean, we may not have that great of an impact, other than a matriculating student would have to wait, probably enjoy some travel, enjoy some free time, and then mom and dad would push them out the door.
A trip to Europe.
Exactly. So, so I'm going to ask, on our side, I'm going to ask Dr. Scott, Dr. Corner, Dr. Bell to get together, pull this, give us an outline of what they think the membership of this committee should be, and then reach out, and then bring it to exec, tell us, present it to the rest of us, and then we'll say yay, nay, or tweak it or whatever, and then we'll do it. And this would be another extraordinary that if we have to bring faculty in on their vacation, then we'll provide a compensation to them because it's outside their contract, and we really want to focus on getting this behind us, and fish or cut bait, move on, and let's do it right. And that's regardless of what PERB says and what we do with 1213 or whatever that year, 1213 or 1112, what was it? Remember?
12.
Who remembers?
Who remembers? Whatever it was, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but it's another bridge, basically. call it the
Summer
bridge to
hiring
nowhere,
compensation from
So
your end.
Melissa had to go, so this was her committee, but I'm sure you guys know what.
Oh.
Summer hiring
Summer hiring
compensation.
compensation.
Is that for the committees that go beyond May?
That's right, it's the committees that move into summer.
Okay.
Whether they're, I don't know if any faculty one will be, but they may be hiring for other positions.
So here's my basic position on this. Unless there is an extraordinary circumstance brought on by the hiring issues we had with Cornerstone on Demand, or there's an extraordinary circumstance brought on by the output of the committee that requires the faculty to stay on, if we can't make a decision by May, then we're going to put the hire on hold, and then backfill with a full-time temp or adjuncts the following year. It's not a good practice to get into to pay faculty to be on hiring committees. It doesn't happen in most places that I'm aware of. We got into it for some extraordinary reasons based upon where we had been as an institution the past few years. Another reason maybe to go back to a winter calendar is to resolve issues like this so that we're not stuck. We all made a concerted effort to make decisions on first of all, the number of faculty we're going to hire and to get that resolved early enough in the process to get through it with our current calendar. So, so bottom line, unless it's an extraordinary circumstance, we want to have these wrapped up by the end of the semester.
Does that mean there'll be no hiring of management positions or any other positions that require faculty in some?
If there's an extraordinary experience or a situation where we absolutely have to have a faculty member and we've got to have an interview because of that, then we'll compensate accordingly. But it's got to be, there has to be a reason for that. Cynthia?
Well, I have 4 management positions that are on hold
It's
now.
always about you, isn't
I
it?
know. They're on hold now due to the faculty hiring, but it's EOPS care, counseling, the Dean of Special Services, and one
If
other
there's an
that's
extraordinary, if there's a reason,
outreach and transfer.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm just going to say, if there's an absolute imperative, if for the good of the students in our district, we need to move forward with this, then we will compensate.
Okay.
But again, it's only going to be because we do it. Now, if we can get back in a normal cycle of hiring people and doing things within the norm, we're fine. But I'm not going to hold a critical position because I'm going to stay very firm on something.
I think that the one thing that we would ask you to consider would be that if we do have those circumstances where we need to hire, that the fact to be compensated not only for the time the committee meets, but for reading applications as well.
I think the answer to that would likely be yes, because again, it's outside their contract, it's outside their governance hours, or their whatever the 5 hours a week are. I think that's only fair and appropriate. Again, I don't want to get into the habit of doing it, but if we have extraordinary circumstances and imperatives and what have you, then we'll do what we have to do.
So as the FA, I just want to say, so we need a process, a document, and it needs to be fair for everyone, because last summer was not fair with the club.
Okay.
We are trying to collect some data about how many applications that faculty can read an hour, so we are trying to
And
collect
what's an average?
data on an average.
Okay. I understand.
Julie, for the FA, would that, I'm sorry,
No,
would that translate into something of a
MOU?
MOU? Yeah,
Would
okay.
be for some work. Brian just wanted to talk, but you're not listening.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to earn any friends with this, but I always told you guys I'll always be honest. I will tell you that in my experience, I haven't really seen campuses compensate people for summer hiring. People have really just seen it as, one of their responsibilities and one of the ways that they could really help the college pick the people who would be best fit for us, for our students, for our faculty, for our staff. I've overseen quite a few faculty hiring committees. As an example, with the math department I used to run, their practice was any full-time math teacher who wanted to be on the committee could be on the committee. So oftentimes we would run summer interviews of 16, 17 applicants with 16 or 17 full-time faculty members in the room, sometimes on Saturdays by their choice. And while I know that's not where we're at right now as a college, I really hope that we start to look at these things, because we don't want to set up situations where we hold off important positions, faculty or administrators alike, because we don't think we can afford to pay people to read applications. And I know that may not be popular, but I just wanted to let you guys know how I feel about that.
And if
As you know, we're working on a plan to try
Yeah.
to get broader participation.
I
Which
agree.
may make that sort of a moot point.
Yeah,
But
because the same people get
Yeah.
hammered with work over and over.
by the
and
end
I
of this
get
year,
that.
I will have been on 4 hiring committees. So, that's like, I'm not gonna do one in the summer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That also might change as the climate improves.
That's
I
right.
agree, and that's why I wanted to say, I know we're not there yet, but hopefully.
And so I completely agree with what Ryan said, and I appreciate your comment, Manny. And trust is something that's earned, and all of that stuff back and forth. So, in the meantime, though, we need to keep the wheels of progress moving forward. And another one of our accreditation realities is all these interims, and we've got to get these positions filled
Yeah, I've got
permanently.
2
and-
that are going forward. I've got Dean of
Yeah.
Library and DE. And I think that one's ready to go. It's just a matter of HR is so busy with the 36 faculty that they haven't had a chance to get the committee together. But I got everybody, and also the Dean of Instructional Support.
So, Joe,
We're gonna go
I
forward.
think I would ask you to maybe you and Dr. Bell meet with an FA representative, maybe Julie and Danny or whatever Julie just said, and let's see if we can hammer out what this MOU might look like and get that going so we know what that is. Okay. So whatever we do is consistent. not something we want to apply on a regular basis, but when we have to apply it, we've got an understanding of how it's going to be applied. Does that work? But again, I think Ryan's Nirvana comment is where we want to be, and hopefully we can get there at
Well,
some
my
point.
experience too is that where I was, they didn't pay for faculty in the summer. Faculty wanted so badly to hire faculty.
Sure.
If they willingly volunteer.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a smaller school and they didn't get that many full-time faculty, so to get those positions was such a coup. No one was going to say no to anything.
Did they want to hire managers? Because I have those that would be held over the summer.
I think they didn't mind the managers, because the managers tend to have, 10 applications. It's not like 300. It's like 10, there's a day of interviewing, so it's not a giant commitment.
I had one faculty member say to me not too long ago that the individual was going to pull an all-nighter because the committee met the next day and that person had not yet gotten through some 100 and something applications. And I kept my normally, verbose mouth closed. I thought to myself, well, gee, how good of a review are you going to do for 100 and something
At 2
applications
a.m.,
at 2 a.m.? But regardless,
That's what happens though, when you're trying to teach and you're trying to go to
Yeah.
committees.
Some of the application systems actually randomly sort so that you don't do that.
I think that's a really good idea.
Put that on the list.
Randomly sort rather than be in alphabetical order?
Rather than being in alphabetical
Okay.
order, I think that's.
But then you never know, it's not as easy, so you have to cut to the
Until we
S's,
stop.
you know?
okay.
Well, I guess you're right.
So we'll move forward with the MOU concept, try to get it figured out. Joe's looking at me like, we don't have money to pay for this,
Okay.
Bob, what are you doing? But, and that's true, but and hopefully we won't have to do this a lot, but at least for this summer, we'll get through it. As we transition to the better place, okay? All right. That being said,
We got through it. So are any of the items, because I heard you guys talking and you don't have any new items, are any of the items 1 through 12 ones that you would like to carry over?
Number 6 every time. Thank you very much.
You got it.
Just put it on.
I would like to add a new item.
so future agenda items.
Triple SP program plan update is due in October, and so we need to start talking about it now, because it'll be too crammed in with everything at the beginning of the semester.
It's on there.
I would say IT issues, we discussed that at the last meeting, and we were gonna get some kind of a report back on how we're gonna communicate better about changes in lines of point and banner and
Oh, okay.
updates and problems and things like that.
I'm sorry, about IT?
Well, regarding particularly banner and Lancer Point.
So the point is, Joe, you'll come to the next meeting and we'll hear what the issues are, we'll talk about them, we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could take a look at last
Last
meeting's
week's minutes.
minutes and some of the issues right there.
Is that the February meeting?
Yes.
Because I read it, I don't see anything about.
On the back
Oh,
page.
the back.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay.
Under faculty college responsibilities.
And,
And then we'll contact you with additional items.
yeah.
Okay.
If
yeah,
and
just
where
gotta
we
say
We're
it.
done.
Yeah, if you guys ever find it hard out,
Or-
if they let them back across the border, you know.
No, yeah.
All right, so we are 3 minutes ahead of time.
As you guys are leaving, and I will be sending this out and handing this out at College Council, but.
Well, that's tomorrow.
That is
Yeah,
tomorrow.
That is tomorrow.